Aujourd'hui, je vais parler de a mild critique on money advice mid-pandemic via the New York Times. Ooh, the New York Times, my old hometown paper. I mean, I mostly think financial media is full of it. But does that sentiment stand for an article via one of the most trusted newspaper of record in the country? Hey, XenPuck here. So I never know what to say when people ask me where I'm from, right? Since I've lived in a bunch of places in my long life so far. But when push comes to shove, I like to default to I'm a New Yorker, if simply because I like the connotation that comes with it. So generally, I like the New York Times because of its pristine reputation for real journalism, right? And yet, I'm somewhat apprehensive about its personal finance reporting. But hey, I saw this article recently that piqued my interest since it seems very time relevant. It is money advice during this seemingly never-ending period of the pandemic. Bah, isn't the pandemic over yet? I mean, I live in a red state now, so I can pretend sometimes like I don't care about it. Alas, I'll never not care about how people spend or misspend their money. So I'll link the article below as well as briefly summarize its main points, because I know the New York Times has that silly paywall and maybe not everyone can read it. Womp womp. Luckily, personal finance articles are pretty easy to condense down, so we shall see if I can make sense of rebutting in a reasonable time frame. In the meantime, please feel free to comment, like, and sub, and all that social media nonsense, just because you're an awesome dude or dudette. Okay. First piece of advice is simple, right? Just find a financial planner to bounce ideas off of. Okay, that is true and reasonable. I'm not entirely sure how this is related to the pandemic in any fashion whatsoever, though. My critique here is very simple. I think for most people who's not particularly money inclined, it's not that they don't want to find a reasonable and a good financial planner to talk to, it's that they don't know how to find one exactly, right? Considering the ridiculous variety of naming conventions in the financial planning space, who knows what designations are worthy of trust, right? You could end up paying someone who doesn't even have your best interest in mind. And that's somehow legal in the USA, so no wonder why most people just ask their friends and family. But still, conceptually, I agree with this point. Ask someone who knows better than you. Oh wait, if you're watching this, I guess you do know that someone already. That's me. Yup, I most likely know better than you on this subject at least, because, well, I've managed to extricate myself from the concept of work already, so proof's in the pudding, right? Oh, also, I do find it kind of funny that as an example of the kind of advice you would get from a good financial planner, the New York Times article uses this. Hey, you should be paying yourself at least 10% of your income. Oh my god, long-time viewers will know what I have to say about this, because I think this is infantilizingly low and utterly unacceptable. You should be saving at least 50%, right? At least if you want any chance of retiring early. Sure, do the whole save 10%, pay yourself 10% thing if you're just starting out, or if you want to die at your desk, slaving away for people you probably don't particularly like, right? I guess. So yeah, don't be a chump and take real action, right? Even the best paper in the country is not brave enough to save more than 10%, because that's what the majority of their audience can even stand, unfortunately, and I find that extremely sad. Second piece of advice, check your credit reports and taxes. I guess credit reports because a pandemic might have sunken some people into additional debt, and taxes so that a person can have a more comprehensive view of their income and apparently maybe get a head start on a refund for 2022 already, okay? So to be clear, once again, you should be doing both of those things like every single year. Not really sure why this is pandemic related either. I guess I can see an average person using credit cards as an emergency fund. Hopefully that's not you, right? Because that's basically taking out a loan with a ridiculously high interest rate, right? Hopefully you've heard me talk about the importance of an emergency fund repeatedly enough. Heck, I'd replace this whole piece of advice with, shouldn't the pandemic have taught us to basically up our emergency fund to at least 1.5 years of basic living expenses instead. Same kind of idea with checking your tax returns, right? You should understand your taxes and by extension your income. And actually you should be aiming to never, ever, ever get a refund, right? Because if you get one, that means you've been loaning Uncle Sam money for almost a year. Like, do you really think the United States government, who literally can print as much paper money as it wants, needs that loan from you, a citizen? Come on. Let's just get real, right? So why would you want to offer up a loan to get it back whenever the government feels like giving you back some money? Now, I get it, I know. When I was younger, I liked getting a refund too, right? Because it felt like a present. But the reality is that ideally you owe no more taxes than you absolutely have to. The government shouldn't be handing you back a refund either. But if there has to be a discrepancy, better to owe than to get a refund, because that implies you could have been investing the additional cash all year round so that your money's actually earning money rather than you loaning the government some money, right? That's what advanced financial thinking looks like. Final piece of advice, point number 3, right? Don't get into considering the catastrophic circumstances that could result as we essentially wallow in ourselves during the past crappy 2 years of lockdown times. Wow, okay. Finally, a piece of advice that is actually pandemic related, right? Honestly, I agree with the gist of this advice, right? We've all had a bit more time to introspect during the COVID years. Frankly, I think that's generally a good thing, right? I mean, most Americans are not exactly known for their propensity to self-reflect, but 2 ongoing years of limited out-of-home activities will do wondrous things on the subject, right? So the point of this advice is don't take this introspection too far and get all depressed because the world seems to be doing so poorly, right? Instead, make plans to counter those thoughts. Plans like levels of financial redundancy and knowing what your basic or minimal cost of living would be. Heck, I've done some version of this recently with my wife since I've been trying to convince her to retire, especially during COVID time. I'm still right now working on my pitch to convince her that our downside is essentially protected, right? My argument basically goes something like this. We have done amazingly well during the pandemic years, actually, but that doesn't mean that there won't be another market shock such as what happened in 2002 or 2008. I mean, I pretty much expect these kind of things to happen on average once a decade or so, and we've been overdue, right? But that shouldn't need to be very scary, because even if the market drops, let's say 50%, guess what? We'll just suck it up in those rare years, right? Because if you look at the history of the United States stock market, the drops are sudden and relatively quick, while the recoveries are long and slow. So as long as we're capable of fending for ourselves during those worst dip years, like as in don't sell anything when things are dropping like a brick, we'd be riding the recovery like champs in no time, right? So what's your spiel about how you deal with the worst of circumstances? Do you have a version of this type of speech for your loved ones? Think about that, right? I mean, anyway, at the end of the day, I found that only 1 out of 3 pieces of pandemic money advice from even such an established news source like the New York Times was even remotely pandemic adjacent. I mean, that's definitely better than I guess my cynical mind thought it would be, but still, like when I read articles like this, that's really when I have fully understood that nobody can actually be qualified to give me advice anymore. Now, I just mean general advice, right? I don't mean that I don't think I can learn more about investing or money, right? I'm positive there's tons more to learn personally. I just mean in terms of generic general advice, I think I'm pretty much way ahead of the curve at this point, and I would love to drag you people, I love the audience, along with me, right? So have you done much introspection on your finances lately? Would love to hear about it below. Cheers, I'll approach it.